You were always the backup plan, Iris. Mom and Dad knew I'd actually do something with their legacy. My sister Victoria stood in our parents' living room, boxes stacked around her like a fortress. She'd already loaded half the furniture into her SUV. The antique clock that used to sit on the mantel, the one Mom wound every Sunday morning, was wrapped in newspaper, shoved between our grandmother's quilts and Dad's record collection. It had been exactly 9 days since we buried them. 9 days since the fire that took both my parents in the middle of the night. And my sister was already erasing them, piece by piece, from the only home I'd ever known. Victoria, can we at least wait until what? She didn't even look at me. Just kept wrapping dishes in bubble wrap with sharp, efficient movements. Until you figure out how to pay for anything? You're a teacher, Iris. Let's be realistic about who can actually maintain their legacy. I wanted to tell her that legacy wasn't measured in dollar signs, that it was measured in the hours I'd spent here, in this house, for the last 6 years. But my throat felt too tight, and I was so tired, so incredibly tired. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Iris Meadowbrook. I'm 31 years old, and until 9 days ago, I had a family. A real one. The kind where Sunday dinners were mandatory, and Dad's terrible jokes were a love language, and Mom left notes in my lunch bag even though I was in my 30s. My sister Victoria is 5 years older than me. She'd always been the golden child, the one who went to business school, married the doctor, moved to the expensive suburb with the perfect lawn. She was successful in all the ways our parents pretended to care about but never actually did. I was different. I became a teacher, 3rd grade, at the local elementary school where my mom had volunteered for 20 years. I made $38,000 a year and lived in a modest apartment downtown. On paper, I looked like the disappointment. But here's what nobody wrote on paper. I was the one who showed up. 6 years ago, Mom was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. She was only 57. Dad was 59. And suddenly he was a caretaker for the woman who'd been his whole world for 35 years. Victoria came to the diagnosis appointment. She cried in the parking lot, hugged us both, and promised to help however she could. Then she went back to her life 2 hours away. I moved back home. Not officially at first, just started staying over on weekends, then 3 nights a week, then 5. By the time Mom forgot how to work the coffee maker, I had a permanent drawer in my old bedroom and Dad had stopped apologizing for needing me there. It wasn't glamorous. Mom had good days and bad days. On good days, she remembered who I was, and we'd watch her favorite cooking shows together. On bad days, she'd look at me like I was a stranger invading her home, and I'd have to gently remind her over and over that I was her daughter, that she was safe, that I loved her. Dad aged 10 years in 2. The stress carved lines into his face that hadn't been there before. He tried to handle everything himself, the medications, the appointments, the moments when Mom wandered outside at 2 a.m. looking for a house she'd lived in 40 years ago. I helped. I canceled dates. I turned down a promotion that would have required relocating. I spent my summer breaks researching memory care techniques instead of traveling. My friends stopped inviting me out because I always had to leave early, always had to check my phone, always had to be ready in case Dad called. Victoria visited on Thanksgiving and Christmas. She'd bring expensive wine and talk about her husband's latest investment portfolio. She'd spend an hour with Mom, get frustrated when Mom didn't remember her name, and then retreat to the kitchen, where Dad and I would try to make conversation feel normal. "You're so good at this," she'd tell me. Like caregiving was a talent I was born with instead of a choice I made every single day. I just don't have the patience. What she meant was, I don't have the time. I have a life. You don't. 3 months ago, Dad had a stroke. Mild, the doctors said. But at 65 with the stress he'd been under, it was a warning sign. He recovered, mostly. His left hand shook sometimes, and he moved slower, but he was alive. But he was also scared. I'd see it in his eyes when he looked at Mom, when he realized they were both getting older and frailer, and the house that had sheltered them for 30 years was becoming too much to handle. We started talking about options, memory care facilities, assisted living. I researched places, made spreadsheets, calculated costs. Victoria sent links to luxury retirement communities she'd Googled, places that cost $8,000 a month, They deserve the best, she'd say on phone calls. Easy to say when you weren't the one doing the math, figuring out how two retired school teachers could afford any of it. Then came the fire. Electrical, the fire marshal said. Something in the old wiring, probably decades-old issues that finally sparked in the middle of February. Dad had been asleep in the downstairs bedroom. They'd moved down there after his stroke. Couldn't manage the stairs anymore. Mom was beside him. The smoke got them before the flames did. They didn't suffer, the medical examiner promised. Small mercies. I got the call at 3:47 a.m. Victoria got to the hospital an hour after I did, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless even at 5 in the morning. We cried together in the waiting room. We held each other when the doctor came out with that look on his face that meant there was no good news coming. For 48 hours, we were united in grief. Then the funeral happened. Then we had to go back to the house. The house had survived, mostly. The downstairs bedroom was destroyed, the kitchen heavily damaged, but the upstairs was intact. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents. The dining room where Dad had taught me to play poker. Mom's sewing room with the window seat where she used to read to me. All of it filled with their things. Their life. Our history. We need to inventory everything, Victoria said, the day after the funeral. She'd shown up in designer jeans and a black cashmere sweater. Her Lexus parked in the driveway like a promise of efficiency. The estate lawyer said we should document everything before the will reading next week. Okay, I said. I was still in my funeral dress. I hadn't left the house since we'd gotten back from the cemetery. Couldn't figure out how to. I'll start upstairs, Victoria said. You can handle the living room. That's when it started. I'd be sorting through photo albums, crying over pictures of Dad teaching me to ride a bike, and I'd hear furniture scraping across the floor above me. I'd come upstairs to find Victoria's car being loaded with boxes. What are you doing? I'm taking Mom's jewelry, she said, like it was obvious. And some of the furniture. My guest room could use that dresser. Victoria, we haven't even read the will yet. It's fine, Iris. We're splitting everything anyway, right? I'm just getting a head start. Over the next week, she took Mom's jewelry box, including the sapphire necklace Grandma had given her. The dining room set Dad's parents had bought them as a wedding present. Mom's collection of first edition cookbooks. Dad's vintage record player and his entire jazz collection. The antique mirror from the hallway. The hope chest that had belonged to my great-grandmother. 3 boxes of random stuff she didn't itemize. Every time I tried to stop her, she had an excuse. Mom would want me to have this. I'm the oldest. You don't have room in your apartment for this furniture anyway. I'll take better care of these things. You know how you are so sentimental you'd just leave everything sitting here collecting dust. By the time the will reading came around, our childhood home looked ransacked. Empty spaces where furniture used to be. Bare walls where paintings had hung. She'd even taken Dad's reading chair, the leather one he'd sat in every evening, the one that still smelled like his cologne. I let her. I was too numb to fight, too buried in paperwork and insurance claims and the logistics of death. What did it matter? They were just things. The things I really wanted, the photo albums, Mom's recipe cards written in her handwriting, Dad's collection of terrible joke books, those were still there. Victoria hadn't wanted any of that. No resale value. The will reading was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at Uncle James's office. Uncle James was Dad's younger brother, an accountant who'd retired early and moved to Florida. He'd flown in for the funeral and stayed to help settle the estate. He was the executor Dad had named him years ago, said he trusted James to be fair and clear-headed. Victoria arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her husband Kevin was with her, looking uncomfortable in his 3-piece suit. He worked in finance, made the kind of money that turned 6 figures into 7, and had the personality of lukewarm oatmeal. I'd come alone. My best friend Simone had offered to come with me, but this felt like something I needed to face by myself. Plus, Simone was 7 months pregnant and didn't need the stress. Uncle James's office was small and cluttered, in that comforting way that meant a person actually worked there, instead of just using it as a status symbol. Photos of his kids were stuck to a bulletin board. His desk was covered in folders and legal pads, and he was wearing reading glasses on a chain around his neck. "Thank you both for coming," he said, his voice gentle. He looked older than I remembered. Grief had marked him too. I know this is difficult. Let's try to get through this as straightforward as possible. He pulled out a folder and opened it slowly, giving us both time to settle into the chairs across from his desk. Your parents were very clear about their wishes, he began. They updated their will 18 months ago. After your mother's diagnosis progressed and your father's health started declining. 18 months ago. I'd been living at home full-time by then. Victoria had been. Where? I tried to remember if she'd even visited that year. The house, Uncle James continued, needs to be sold. The fire damage makes it uninhabitable, and there's not enough in the estate to cover a full renovation. The insurance payout and sale proceeds will be split between you both, 50-50. Same with the liquidation of the business assets. The antique shop will be sold, inventory included. Victoria nodded, satisfied. I felt nothing. The house would be sold. Of course it would. What had I expected? Personal items, Uncle James said, and here he paused, looking at Victoria directly. Your parents specified that Victoria may keep whatever she's already taken from the house. They understood you'd want family heirlooms. Victoria's smile was sharp and quick. See? Her expression said. I told you. Those items, Uncle James continued, are valued at approximately $32,000, based on the appraisals your parents had done last year. That will come out of your share of the estate, Victoria. Her smile faltered. They had everything appraised, Uncle James said simply. The jewelry, the furniture, the books. They kept detailed records. Standard practice for estate planning. That's fine, Victoria said quickly. $32,000 is nothing compared to what the house and business will bring in. Uncle James nodded slowly. Then he pulled out an envelope. However, he said, there's a separate letter. Your parents asked me to read this to you both before we conclude. My heart started beating faster. I don't know why. Something in his tone, maybe. Or the way he wouldn't quite meet our eyes. He unfolded the letter, and I recognized Dad's handwriting immediately, sharp and slanted. The handwriting of someone who'd spent 40 years grading papers. Dear Victoria and Iris, Uncle James read. If you're hearing this, it means we're gone, and we hope you know how much we loved you both. Victoria, we know you've already taken items from the house. We wanted you to have them. The jewelry, the furniture, the books, they're worth about $30,000 total, and we hope you treasure them. Uncle James paused, looked up at us, then back down at the letter. What you don't know, he continued reading, is what's in the storage unit. My stomach dropped. Storage unit? Unit 247 at Secure Space Storage, off Highway 76, Uncle James read. We've been renting it for 12 years. The key is enclosed with this letter. Inside, you'll find our real collection, the items we spent a lifetime gathering, the pieces we could never display or talk about because we didn't want anyone to know their value. We were teachers, after all. Teachers, with a very expensive hobby. Victoria's face had gone pale. The collection includes 47 pieces of American folk art, authenticated and appraised, Uncle James read. 19th century paintings, quilts, sculptures. Current estimated value, $2.1 million. There's also a collection of rare coins passed down from my grandfather, valued at approximately $400,000. And first edition books? Signed about $200,000. The room was silent except for Uncle James's voice. We wanted to see what would happen when we were gone, he read. Who would show up for us, not for our money? Who would value our memory over our assets? Victoria, you chose the house items, the furniture you could use, the jewelry you could wear, the visible, immediate value. That was your test. Uncle James paused again, and I saw something in his expression, sadness, maybe, or pity. Iris, he read, you chose nothing. You didn't take anything because you were too busy grieving, too busy sorting through our memories, too busy being present even after we were gone. Just like you were present for the last 6 years of our lives. My vision was blurring. I felt Victoria staring at me, but I couldn't look at her. The storage unit and all its contents, Uncle James read, are left entirely to Iris Meadowbrook, along with one additional provision. The door to the office opened. I turned, and my heart stopped. Grandma Eloise was standing there. Grandma Eloise, who we'd been told was in hospice in Arizona. Grandma Eloise, who Victoria said was too sick to travel for the funeral. Grandma Eloise, who I hadn't seen in 3 years because Victoria kept saying she wasn't well enough for visitors. She was 86 years old, using a walker, but she was alive, very much alive. "Hello, girls," she said, and her voice was exactly as I remembered, warm and sharp at the same time, like honey with a bite to it. "Grandma?" I stood up so fast I knocked my chair backward. We thought. I know what you thought." She made her way slowly into the room, Uncle James guiding her to a chair. "Victoria's been telling everyone I'm at death's door for years now. Keeps people from feeling guilty about not visiting." Victoria had gone rigid in her seat. "Grandma, I never said." "You told Iris I was too ill for visitors," Grandma Eloise said calmly. "You told your parents I wanted privacy in my final days. You told anyone who asked that I'd made peace with not seeing family before I passed. That's not—" "I called Iris every week," Grandma said, looking at me now. "Every Sunday at 3 o'clock. Did she ever tell you that, Victoria?" Victoria's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. "She didn't," Grandma continued, answering her own question. "Because Iris doesn't brag. Doesn't announce her goodness like it's an achievement. She just does it. She called me every week, sent me photos, told me about her students, asked about my health, my friends, my life. She made me feel seen." "Grandma, I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. "I've been so busy." "I have $4 million, Grandma Eloise said, cutting her off. "Savings, investments, the sale of my house when I moved to assisted living. I've been planning what to do with it for years. Your parents and I talked about it extensively." She pulled an envelope out of her purse with shaking hands. "It's all going to Iris." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "You can't," Victoria started. "I can, and I have," Grandma said. "It's done. The lawyers have the paperwork. Iris has been designated as my primary beneficiary for 3 years now. I updated it after the 2nd year she called me every Sunday, while you couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone on my birthday." Uncle James was reading from another document now. "Combined with the storage unit contents and the insurance payout for the house split, Iris Meadowbrook's total inheritance is approximately $6.8 million. I couldn't breathe. Victoria stood up so fast her chair slammed into the wall. "This is insane. You can't do this. I'm family too." "You took what you wanted," Grandma Eloise said quietly. $30,000 worth of furniture and jewelry. Things you could see, touch, use immediately. You saw your parents' death as an opportunity to redecorate your guest room. That's not fair. Iris spent 6 years taking care of your mother. She gave up promotions, relationships, her entire social life. She was there at 2 a.m. when your mother wandered outside. She was there when your father had his stroke. She was there, Victoria. Where were you? I have a life. I have responsibilities." So did Iris. She chose differently. Victoria's face was red now, tears streaming down her cheeks. But they weren't sad tears. They were angry ones, furious ones. "You all planned this," she hissed. "You all conspired to humiliate me, to make me look like a bad daughter." "No one made you look like anything," Uncle James said quietly. "You made your choices." "She can have it," Victoria spat, grabbing her purse. "She can have all of it. The broken house, the dusty old paintings, all of it. I don't need your charity money." She stormed toward the door, then turned back. "But don't expect me to be there when you need help, Iris. Don't expect me to show up for Sunday dinners or birthdays or weddings or anything. You want to be the perfect daughter? Fine. You get to do it alone." She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Kevin, her husband, had stayed sitting the entire time. Now he stood slowly, looking embarrassed and lost. "I'm sorry," he said to me quietly. "I didn't know about any of this." Then he left too, following Victoria into the parking lot. The room was silent. Then Grandma Eloise reached over and took my hand. "Breathe, sweetheart." I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let it out in a shaky gasp. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why didn't they tell me? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because then it wouldn't have been real," Grandma said. "You would have known there was money coming. You might have even subconsciously acted differently. We needed to see who you really were when there was nothing to gain. I didn't do it for money, I said, and my voice cracked. I did it because they were my parents. Because I loved them. We know, honey. That's why you got everything. Uncle James was pulling out more papers, explaining things I couldn't quite process. Tax implications. Trust accounts. Investment portfolios. The storage unit key was real. He slid it across the desk to me, small and brass and impossible. There's one more thing, he said gently. Your father's final instruction. He handed me a flash drive. He made a video, Uncle James said, 2 months before he died. He wanted you to watch it, but only after the will was read. He said you'd need it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the tiny device. Grandma squeezed my hand tighter. Let's go home, she said. You can watch it there, and we can talk about what comes next. I nodded, numb and overwhelmed, and feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. We left Uncle James's office together, me and my grandmother, alive and smiling, her walker clicking on the linoleum as we made our way to my beat-up Honda in the parking lot. Victoria's Lexus was gone. That night, I sat in my apartment, my tiny, cramped apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played guitar at midnight, and I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Dad's face appeared on screen. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. This had been filmed after his stroke. His left hand was in his lap, slightly curled. He was sitting in his reading chair, the one Victoria had taken, the one that was probably in her guest room right now. Hi, sweetheart, he said, and his voice broke me open. If you're watching this, then you know. About the storage unit, about the money, about Grandma, about all of it. He smiled, that sad smile I'd seen so often in those last few years. I need you to understand something, Iris. Your mother and I didn't do this to punish Victoria. We did it to honor you, to recognize what you gave up for us. Tears were streaming down my face. You think you didn't do anything special, he continued. You think caregiving is just basic human decency, something anyone would do. But it's not, honey. It's a choice. It's a sacrifice. It's love in its purest, hardest form. He paused, and I could see him gathering his thoughts. Victoria chose success. Money, status, the kind of life that looks good on paper. And there's nothing wrong with that. But she chose it over us. Over being present. Over showing up when it was hard and inconvenient and there was nothing to gain. You chose us. Every single day for 6 years, you chose us. You chose your mother when she didn't remember your name. You chose me when I couldn't tie my shoes anymore. You chose family when it cost you everything else. His eyes were wet now too. The money isn't a reward, sweetheart. It's a safety net. It's freedom. It's the ability to choose what matters to you without worrying about rent or bills or whether you can afford to keep showing up for people you love. He leaned forward, and I could see the fierce love in his expression, the same look he'd given me when I was 5 and learning to ride a bike, when I was 16 and heartbroken over my first breakup, when I was 30 and exhausted from changing my mother's sheets at 3 a.m. Use it well, he said. Use it to build the life you deserve. And please, please don't feel guilty. You earned this in ways that have nothing to do with money. The video ended. I sat in the dark, crying until I couldn't cry anymore. The next morning, I went to the storage unit. Uncle James came with me, and Simone insisted on coming too, even though she was so pregnant she had to sit down every 15 minutes. We stood in front of Unit 247, and I held the brass key in my hand, feeling the weight of it. Ready? Uncle James asked. I unlocked the door and rolled it up. The space was about 15 by 20 feet. Climate-controlled and carefully organized. Paintings lined the walls, wrapped in protective covering. Sculptures sat on custom shelves. Boxes were labeled in Dad's handwriting. Quilts, 1840s, coins, gold, books, first editions. In the center of the unit was a small card table. On it sat a photo album and a note. I picked up the note. Iris. We started collecting when we were newlyweds. Your mom found a painting at a garage sale, paid $5 for it. Turned out to be worth $30,000. We were hooked. For 40 years, we hunted at estate sales, auctions, antique stores. We learned to spot value where others saw junk. We were good at it. Really good. But we were also teachers. We couldn't let people know we had money, it would have changed everything. Our colleagues, our neighbors, even our own children. So we kept it secret. We lived modestly. We saved everything. We always planned to leave it to you both. But then your mother got sick, and we saw who showed up, who stayed, who loved us for us, not for what we could provide. This collection is your history and your future. Sell it, keep it, donate it, whatever feels right. But know that every piece was chosen with love, and now that love belongs to you. Mom and Dad, I sank onto the floor, right there in the storage unit, and sobbed. Simone sat down next to me, as much as her pregnant belly would allow, and put her arm around my shoulders. They saw you, she whispered. They really saw you. 6 months later, things had changed. I'd had the collection professionally appraised. Dad had undersold it, the total was closer to $2.8 million. I sold most of it at auction. Kept 3 pieces that reminded me of specific memories with my parents. I used the money to start the Meadowbrook Family Foundation. We funded caregiver support programs, respite care, counseling, financial assistance for people who'd quit jobs to take care of aging parents. In the first 6 months, we helped 43 families. I bought a house. Nothing huge, but it had a guest room for Grandma Eloise, who'd decided to move back from Arizona. She was slowing down, but her mind was sharp as ever, and she loved helping me run the foundation. I kept teaching. People thought I was crazy, why work when you have millions? But I loved my students, loved the routine, loved the reminder that money didn't define worth. Victoria and I hadn't spoken since the will reading. I'd sent her a letter 2 months later, trying to explain that this wasn't about punishment or revenge, that I'd share everything with her if she just wanted to talk. She never responded. But Kevin did. He sent a short email. She's not ready yet. Maybe someday. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better from her. Then he sent divorce papers his own. He and Victoria had separated a month after the will reading. Turned out she'd been planning to use her inheritance to start a business, had been spending money she didn't have, and when the truth came out, he realized he'd married someone he didn't actually know. I felt sad about that. Not guilty, I knew I hadn't caused their marriage to fail. But sad that Victoria had built her life on such a fragile foundation, that one disappointment shattered everything. 8 months after the will reading, I was at the grocery store when I ran into her. She was in the organic produce section, looking thinner than I remembered. Her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail instead of her usual perfect blowout. She was wearing yoga pants and an old sweatshirt. She saw me the same moment I saw her. For a second, I thought she'd run. Or maybe scream. Or ignore me completely. Instead, she started crying. Right there in front of the organic kale, my sister broke down. I didn't think. I just moved. I left my cart and went to her and hugged her while she sobbed into my shoulder. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I was so awful. I was so selfish. I'm sorry. I know, I whispered. I know. We sat in my car in the parking lot for 2 hours while she told me everything. The divorce, the financial stress, the realization that she'd burned every meaningful bridge in her life chasing a version of success that left her empty. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said finally, her voice raw. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did, what I threw away. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd spent 6 years making the wrong choices and was finally ready to admit it. I forgive you, I said. Her eyes widened. You can't. I can. I do. I took her hand. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. You hurt me. You disrespected our parents' memory. That doesn't disappear just because you're sorry. She nodded, tears streaming down her face again. But, I continued, if you want to rebuild slowly, carefully, honestly, I'm willing to try. Why? She whispered. Why would you do that after everything I've done? I thought about Dad's video, about his words about choosing family when it's hard. Because that's what family does, I said. Not the people who show up for the good stuff, the people who show up for the repair work. Victoria and I started having coffee once a month, It was awkward at first. She apologized a lot, and I had to keep reminding her that apologies without changed behavior were just words. But slowly, she changed. She got a job at a small marketing firm, downsized to a modest apartment, started seeing a therapist. She asked about the foundation, and I carefully, cautiously, let her help with some administrative work. She asked about Grandma Eloise and cried when she realized how much time she'd wasted. She didn't ask about the money. Not once. 1 year after the will reading, Victoria and I stood in the cemetery where our parents were buried. She brought flowers. I brought new photos for the memorial marker pictures from the foundation's first anniversary event, where we'd helped our 50th family. I finally watched Dad's video, she said quietly. I looked at her, surprised. Uncle James gave you a copy? He gave me one the day of the will reading. I just couldn't watch it, not until last week. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at our parents' names carved in granite. He was right, she said. About all of it. I chose success over family. I chose appearances over presence. And I lost everything that actually mattered. You didn't lose me, I said. I'm still here. She looked at me. And for the first time in a year, she smiled. A real smile. Not the bitter or sad ones I'd seen before. I don't deserve you. Probably not, I agreed. And she laughed that surprised, genuine laugh that sounded like the sister I remembered from childhood, before life got complicated. We stood there together as the sun set, two sisters who'd taken very different paths and were finally, slowly, finding their way back to each other. Not because of money or inheritance or anyone's definition of success, but because family, real family, is built on showing up, on choosing each other when it's hard, on forgiveness that costs something. I learned that from my parents. From 6 years of caregiving that taught me what love actually looks like when no one's watching and there's nothing to gain. And now I get to teach it to others. Through the foundation, through rebuilding with Victoria, through the life I'm creating with my grandmother in our little house with the guest room. Some people measure wealth in dollars. I measure it in Sunday phone calls and 2 a.m. moments and the people who show up when it matters. By that measure, I'm the richest person I know. Where are you watching from right now? Have you ever had to be the family caregiver? Did you feel seen or invisible? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Every time you share this, you help someone else who's struggling with similar family dynamics know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up when your world is falling apart and stays until you can stand again. That's the inheritance that actually matters.